The whole school knew that Amy was head over heels chasing the cool campus heartthrob. Peter, known for his cold and aloof demeanor, was considered unapproachable. And me, Chris, I'm bright and carefree, like a little sunbeam. When others mocked Peter, I stood up for him. When his family fell ill, I covered his medical expenses. When he was absent-minded, I stole a kiss. Many bet I'd get nowhere with Peter, but I succeeded. That cold campus heartthrob turned into a clingy little puppy, always wanting to be close. But then, a sudden family issue made me leave the country without a trace. I thought I'd never cross paths with Peter again. Surprise. When I came back and started my new job, Peter was my boss. By day, he's cold and distant, but at night he'd hold me tight, softly begging, "Don't leave me again." I'm well off, my family is rich. But my situation's awkward, I'm the third child. I have a capable older sister and a genius brother. I'm the daughter my parents had in their late years, their only hope was for me to grow up healthy. They even said in front of the whole family, "Amy, whether your brother or sister takes over, they'll take care of you." Do you think I'd be upset with the arrangement, fighting for inheritance? No, I'm all about enjoying life's comfort. You know how it is, being this well off and idle can be boring. I need fun when I'm bored. Sometimes, I set up a stall to sell little toys, then give them away if I feel like it. My friends call me a sucker, the type who wouldn't take change back when buying snacks. But I think these people need the money more than I do. I've loved reading novels since I was a kid, always thought someone like me should have a male protagonist. I never had feelings for anyone until college. That's when I met him. I was the class monitor. When we were handing out books at the start of the term, there was a student who was late. After calling him, I learned he was on his way. Eager, I wanted to find him, turned around, and bumped into Peter's arms. I was stunned. He had the same posture as me, phone in hand. With the sun behind him, his tousled hair looked golden. A voice echoed in my mind, "He's the one, the male lead." His usually cold gaze felt warm, making my skin itch. I snapped back to reality, saw his name tag, and realized he was the one I was looking for. "Are you Peter?" I anxiously grabbed his hand to lead him away. But he didn't budge, just glanced at our hands. Embarrassed, I let go, explaining, "Let's go move the books." But he was unhurried. Impatient, I tugged his sleeve to quicken his pace. This time, he didn't let go. It seemed he couldn't let go, either. My male lead wasn't much of a talker but definitely turned heads. In class, I'd always find a way to sit next to him. After a month, summoning my courage, I poked him, "Hey, can I get your contact?" Peter fixed his gaze on me, "Who are you?" "Excuse me?" "I've been sitting next to you for a month." "Who am I?" "Nice thanks, Joker." Of course, it comforted me that he was like this with everyone, not just me. Equal treatment for all. Ironically, his aloofness triggered my competitive streak. What started playful now got serious. After a month of observing Peter, I found him more captivating. His looks aren't the only thing. His grades are stellar too. I noticed he skipped all classes except core ones. Mysterious. So, one day, I followed him after class to uncover his secret. Like an agent, I trailed him off campus into the bustling city. But in the crowd, I lost track. Frustrated, I vowed I'd keep a closer eye next time. Suddenly, a snap brought me back. I looked up to see Peter, arms crossed and expressionless. "You following me?" Wanting to cry, I'd never done this before and got caught. I wanted to whisper in his ear, "Quiet, is this something to brag about?" Facing Peter's question, I nodded nervously. He chuckled, eyes narrowing lazily. "Got a crush on me?" For a second, I blanked out. What kind of leap was that? How to answer? Honestly, I nodded. If I have anything, it's honesty. Magic beats magic. Peter was taken aback. My bold confession, instead of scaring him off, caught him by surprise. He stood stunned, processing the situation. Neither of us moved, frozen on the street. After a while, Peter checked his phone, then started to leave. A few steps ahead, he turned and called, "Follow me." What does that mean? Is he accepting, or not? Since he asked me to follow, he must not mind me, right? Maybe, he even likes me a bit. I trailed after him to a cafe. As soon as we sat, he came back in uniform with a menu, polite yet distant. "Hello, may I take your order?" My hand clenched the table, realizing he brought me here to boost his sales. Feeling defeated, I sulkily ordered the priciest coffee. Money's not an issue. I have plenty to spare. I thought about tearing his uniform off, throwing money at him, and saying, "Need money? Stay with me and you'll never run out." But that fantasy stayed in my head. When Peter was free, I raised my hand like a student. "Peter, I'm so bored." Peter had a slight, almost imperceptible smile and let out a cold snort, as if to say, "Why would I care if you're bored?" But he still acknowledged me. Peter placed a piece of paper and a pen on my desk. I looked up, puzzled. My bony fingers tapped on the paper, making a clear, cool sound. "Write a reflection." How does he say something so cold with a 37 degrees Celsius mouth? 800 words. I'll check it later. Peter raised an eyebrow. Following people isn't exactly good behavior. I pouted. I leaned on the desk, the pen scratchily working over the rough paper surface. As the sun set, Peter finished washing the last coffee cup, squinting at the girl already asleep by the window. The evening light cast a gold halo in her hair. He dried his hands and quietly walked over to Amy's side. Gently, he slipped out the paper from under her sleeve. What met his eyes was a simple drawing of a pig. The paper, which should have been filled with a reflection, was instead covered with 3 words, repeated over and over. "Hate you, hate you, hate you." Peter's tongue gently pressed against his cheek, a soft chuckle escaping from his chest. She had said she liked him that morning. And now she hated him? The words, just like her, were soft, and even her insults had no bite. They just made her seem adorable. Ever since I found out Peter had a side job, I felt closer to him. We had morning classes at 8 a.m. 4 days a week. Peter was always cutting it close, his routine being to sit beside me and nap. I nudged him with my elbow. "Didn't have breakfast again?" Peter, with sleepy eyes and a couple of swallows, spoke in a dry voice. "Tired, don't bother me." I pulled him upright, saying righteously, "I brought you some, you have to eat." Having never really liked anyone before, I was just going with my gut feelings. I wanted him to eat well, drink well, and not be unhappy. Peter, however, remained unmoving, only his hair swaying softly under the fan. I squinted, laying a gentle hand on Peter's waist. Peter instantly curled up, finally willing to look at me, his brow furrowed with impatience. I swallowed hard, trembling slightly as I lifted the breakfast. "If you don't eat it, I'm tossing it." Peter stared at me, silent for a moment, then suddenly laughed. His dimples deepened, his brows relaxed, and his eyes sparkled as if a light flowed through them. Now it was my turn to be stunned. He really was handsome. After class, I did what I always did and followed him to the coffee shop. The weather was nice today, with a gentle breeze. We walked side by side, Peter with his hands in his pockets, teasingly turning to me. "Why aren't you following sneakily this time?" I flashed him a slow smile. "You've got to do things openly, right?" It seemed like my words tickled him again, his lips curling into a small smile. Everyone said Peter was serious and intimidatingly cold. That's all nonsense, right? Sitting in my usual spot at the coffee shop, I was doing homework while admiring the guy at work. Peter was serving a customer when the guy suddenly stood and splashed coffee at him. I rushed in front of Peter, reacting instinctively by tossing my unfinished coffee back at the guy. I yelled at him, "What's your problem? Why throw coffee at someone for no reason?" I stood protectively in front of Peter, like a hen guarding its chick, confronting the customer. But I'd done the same thing. Facing off with a grown man for the first time, I was a bit nervous. The man sneered, "Are you just here for this waiter's looks, buying coffee every day?" He loudly announced, "You all love gawking at others, huh? This coffee shop's bound to fail, attracting customers this way. There's nothing worse than stealing other people's girlfriends." After he finished, the shop fell silent for a few seconds. A wave of quiet snickers rippled through the onlookers. Peter was handsome, and many came to see him and buy coffee. On his first day working, the coffee shop's sales doubled. Apparently, this guy's girlfriend frequently came for the coffee because of Peter's looks. Upset, the guy's girlfriend ended up dumping him. Blaming Peter, the guy came to make trouble. Hearing this, I chuckled coldly. "You really think you broke up because of Peter?" I gave him a once-over with Amy's signature scrutinizing look. He shifted uncomfortably under my gaze. Sometimes, people need to reflect on themselves. With a body like a pig's, it's good riddance for your ex. Someone started clapping, soon followed by more applause. The guy, embarrassed and angry, raised his hand at me, but seeing all the faces laughing at him, he finally backed down and left. "Why do you seem angrier than I am?" Peter asked, casually passing me a glass of milk after the shop closed. He acted like nothing had happened, and it bothered me. I crossed my arms, fuming. "Yeah, I am angry. And you should be too. I want you to care about yourself. Don't just brush off every grievance like it's no big deal, like nothing happened." It pained me. I wanted to shield Peter from all unhappiness. Peter pulled out a chair, resting his head gently against my neck. After a long silence, he sighed softly. "Yeah, I'm mad. But with you by my side, my happiness outweighs the anger." I glanced at Peter, seeing him vulnerable. It was like a hedgehog shedding its protective spikes, revealing its soft heart. Peter had his head buried in my neck, and I could hear his faint breathing. Suddenly, everything else faded away, leaving only the sound of my heartbeat pounding loudly. I leaned in a little closer and kissed him lightly. A soft pink color crept up his pale neck. Before I could even finish blushing, he leaned in and kissed me deeply, warmly. It was so intense and passionate, it left my mind reeling. There was only one thought in my head. I'm really falling for him. After it ended, Peter still looked indifferent. But I noticed his ears were turning a bright red. We closed up the shop together and headed back to school in silence. After a while, Peter finally spoke. "You? Aren't you gonna say something?" I stared straight at Peter, not giving him a chance to look away. Weren't my actions clear enough about how I feel? We walked down the tree's shadowed path, cherry blossoms fluttering around us. Peter's fingers curled slightly, and he took a few breaths before speaking again. "You probably don't know. I've always been kind of a loner, not the best personality, and without many friends." He stopped mid-sentence. It was my first time seeing Peter like this. The number one student, the teacher's favorite, the aloof genius, now revealing his flaws to me. I mumbled out an "oh" and nodded. Weren't we supposed to be talking about dating? How did we end up on his childhood? Peter seemed pretty pitiful as a kid. I tried to reach up to pat his head to comfort him, but even on my tiptoes, I couldn't reach. Frustrated, I slapped his shoulder and told him to bend down. Peter bent down, bewildered. I ruffled his hair and watched him, half bent, chuckling. 6 feet and still had to bend for me. Surprised, he hesitated. "That's your reaction?" I playfully pinched his cheek. "What else?" Realizing what he meant, I scratched my head. "Is this what you wanted to talk about?" Peter's long lashes fluttered. "Yeah, with me like this, would you still like me?" People say it takes two to tango, and no one hangs out with me because of my personality. Sensing his worry, I thought, that's it? I don't get it. I grabbed his head to face me, explaining, "First, you're good looking. That alone sets you apart from a lot of guys. Second, you're smart. You're our top student. Do you know how hard it is to get into this college? Plus, you acknowledge your flaws. And you're good looking, right on my heart. I swallowed those words back, not wanting him to think I was shallow. I concluded, you're an amazing person. People used to being undervalued often can't handle compliments. Peter instinctively shook his head, but before he could finish, I shut him up in the best way. As I stepped back, Peter still looked dazed, touching his lips. He seemed to still feel the warmth. He looked up at me, about to speak. I hushed him, with a finger over his lips. No more calling yourself lousy. I raised a fist mock threatening, or I'll shut you up like just now. Peter looked at the scene, laughing suddenly. I felt like saying it 100 times. Peter finally agreed. I continued, now say, Peter is the best. Peter complied, Peter is the best. He added silently, Amy is the best. Tell me more, tell me more. I didn't expect Peter, usually so aloof, to be like this. Amy shook my shoulders, excited like a kid in a candy shop. I sighed, sprawling back on the bed, you know the rest, I moved abroad, met you. And now I'm back. It was sudden. We moved overseas to avoid drama. My phone got stolen on the first day, so I got a new number. I lost touch with everything back home, including Peter's storyline. After graduating abroad, I worked there 2 years, then decided to return. Not sure why, just felt I should. Didn't expect to see Peter so soon. On my first day, I had my employee badge, getting to know the role. A coworker spoke English. I explained I grew up in China. She nodded, whispered, the CEO's checking on us today. He's strict, we have to be careful. I raised an eyebrow, asking while uncapping my thermos, sounds intense. What's his name? Peter. Suddenly, my mind blanked, heart thumping loudly. My coworker continued, with that temper, plenty of ladies still swoon over him. I replayed the name I knew so well in my mind. Peter. Could it be him? Peter. Greetings echoed, and I looked over. Peter wore a sharp, dark suit with gold-rimmed glasses, face unreadable. Sensing my gaze, he looked my way. Our eyes met. The thermos slipped from my hand, pouring warm water toward Peter's shoes. It's him. Peter. The only person I really had a crush on during my lively, bratty teenage years. But now, he didn't seem to recognize me. Awkward silence hit as everyone watched. I whispered an apology, bending to pick it up. Peter was quicker, retrieving the pink thermos, glancing impassive, emotionless. Heart pounding, Peter handed it back with a simple, be careful next time, before walking away surrounded by people. I froze until he was out of sight, feeling the sting of tears. His expression showed no trace of recognition. Did he really forget? This thermos, he gave it to me. I remember my first bad cramp and him standing by, helpless. Eventually, he memorized my cycle, always had red sugar water ready in this thermos. He'd have a hot water bottle in winter. My hands cold, he'd stick them in his pockets, warming me bit by bit. Intimate memories, yet now so distant. Back then, I was carefree Amy. Now, just a staff member at his company. He used to be a student achieving everything on his own. Now he's an executive overseeing multiple departments. The current him has reached his peak, just as I was at my best in school. Not to mention that I was the one who left without a word. In the future, we will be like strangers. So, did Peter come to find you in private afterward? Amy wasn't happy about this encounter, pounding the bed with her fist in frustration. I remember you mentioning him a couple of times when we were abroad. I even thought you two were cute. And now, nothing? Come on. I turned over, buried my face in the pillow, and quietly said, what else is there to tell? He probably forgot about me a long time ago. Besides, think about who he is now. He might have been a heartbroken romantic back then, but now he has plenty of women to help him get over that. Tears rolled down my face as I turned away and closed my eyes. I hate you, Peter. I thought it would be awkward having Peter as my boss, but it turned out it wasn't a big deal. A boss is just a boss, and I don't see him often. I go about my life and work as usual. Amy, be careful today, a colleague told me with a sympathetic look the moment I sat down at my desk. What happened? I asked, organizing my stuff. Peter specifically chose you to handle today's project. Peter's strictness is well known around here. My colleague didn't think much of it, just felt sorry for me, knowing there was nothing they could do. I figured it wasn't a big deal since I've been here for a week, and Peter still hasn't approached me. If I worry about it, then I'm just being silly. I headed out with the files to meet with the client alongside Peter. On the way, we crossed a grass field and a little dog ran up to us. Instinctively, I stepped in front of Peter and nonchalantly shooed the dog away. Afterward, I paused. I'm not scared anymore, Peter said in a calm, raspy voice. Caught off guard, I smiled awkwardly. Yeah, I know. I turned to glimpse the sky, my thoughts drifting, and softly laughed. I guess I've just got used to it. Back when Peter and I were dating, we'd walk hand in hand around campus where there were lots of dogs. When a dog approached, Peter would clearly step back, which made me ask, "Are you afraid of dogs?" He slowly nodded, "Yeah, a little." I was surprised to find out Peter had fears too back then. It was like I found his Achilles heel and would often tease him with dogs. Eventually, I realized he was genuinely scared, so I insisted on helping him through desensitization therapy. As I saw it, my man shouldn't have weaknesses. I started by giving him dog-themed trinkets and stuffed animals. Then I'd take him to dog cafes, and he cooperated. Later, I learned why he feared dogs. I hadn't imagined that Peter, so strong and independent now, was bullied as a child. Being a left-behind child with elderly grandparents meant he was an easy target for teasing. Kids would hold dogs and taunt him. When Peter froze, they'd seize the chance to hit him. I cried with hurting empathy and apologized. "I'm sorry for using your pain to tease you." But Peter shook his head and said, "Thank you." After wrapping up work, I was about to leave with other colleagues when Peter stopped me. Right in front of everyone, he handed me the car keys and said, "The driver is off today. Amy, please drive me home." Colleagues looked at me with pity, but secretly celebrated since it meant Peter wasn't asking them instead. I took the keys. Adjusting the seat, I grumbled, "It's not like it's my car. What if I'm not comfortable driving it and something happens?" "It could be your car," Peter said unexpectedly from the passenger seat. "I gave you the key," he added, lifting his head slightly. The ambiguous meaning behind his words left me puzzled. Peter input a location into the GPS that led to a restaurant, not his home. "Aren't we heading home?" I asked. "We're going to eat," he replied. "Me?" I questioned, pointing at myself. "Yes," Peter said, unfazed. "Did I agree to that?" I retorted. As adults, I figured, we should be straightforward. Since we recognized each other, I felt no need to pretend otherwise. Staring ahead, I hesitated before asking about his grandma. "How's grandma?" I left when she was in the hospital, and even while abroad, I'd think about her at times. "She misses you," Peter replied. "And Lucky? Is he okay?" Lucky was the dog we raised together, a name I chose. Peter answered, "He's fine." Whether real or imagined, I noticed Peter's face grew darker with each question I asked. I was curious about old friends after returning from abroad, so I bombarded Peter with questions. And now I knew Peter had really moved on from me. I was the only one talking during the ride. He didn't bother asking about me at all. In our history, it was always me who cared more for him. Thinking about it just made me sad again. Parking the car, I prepared to leave when Peter's voice came to me softly. "And me?" "What?" I turned to him. "Are you interested in knowing about me?" Peter mumbled, almost like an echoing thought. "You've asked about Lucky, Grandma, and mutual friends, he continued, his voice low and gravelly. But you never asked about me. Peter leaned closer, his hands suddenly grasping my neck. He kissed me, gentle but soon growing into a passion-filled, intense kiss. Peter's hand clasped my waist, enclosing me in his manly scent, making it hard to breathe. In that moment, I didn't care anymore. I wasn't concerned if Peter still liked me. I didn't need to know what that sudden kiss meant. I just wanted to lose myself in the present moment. I wrapped my arm around his neck, responding willingly. After what felt like an eternity, Peter ended the kiss, though his hand remained on my waist. He lowered his long eyelashes, gazing heavily at me. "Show some care for me," he murmured. "So, what's the deal between you two now?" Amy gasped at hearing today's shocking news, her voice nearly exploding with excitement. Her grin stretched practically to her temples. "What kind of deal?" I stammered, not knowing how to answer. I wasn't sure myself. Amy rested her chin on her hand, pondering. "It seems like you're the one in control now. Do you still like him? Or do you still want to keep going with him?" Memories of youth flashed through my mind frame by frame. The scenes of memories and today's kiss crossed time and space, weaving together at this moment. I almost answered without thinking, yes. My smile was so bright even my dimples came alive. Yes. I want to. Instead of being twisted about who is right or wrong and wasting time, it's better to face your heart openly. Why can't two people who love each other be together? I said firmly once more, "I want to keep going with Peter." Amy teased me with a smile. "Not going to play hard to get a little?" Not playing hard to get. Amy went on, "Do you know how cheap your smile is right now?" I nodded with a silly grin. "Yeah, it's cheap. Liking him is the longest lasting thing I've ever done on a whim." I thought that over time, my feelings for Peter would be sealed away. But seeing him again, my once calm heart skipped a beat. I had insomnia last night and caught the last elevator. The elevator was full, and I noticed Peter, the CEO, was there too. Peter clearly noticed me. He shielded me in the corner as everyone else warily distanced themselves from him. Recalling yesterday's kiss, I was a bit nervous and swallowed hard. It's a strange feeling. Like meeting your partner the day after confirming your relationship, there's an inexplicable shyness. Suddenly, my fingers hanging by my side were hooked. Without moving my head, I glanced down, feeling like I was about to explode inside. Because Peter intertwined his fingers with mine right there in front of everyone. Peter really has changed a lot. He's no longer the shy boy who'd blush when I kissed him. I have to admit, he's more mature now, more confident, and he knows just how to handle me. The elevator went up, and Peter only let go of my hand as we stepped out. We exited one after the other, like strangers who didn't know each other. I sat at my desk working for a bit. Calvin came over and knocked on my table. "Amy, Peter wants to see you in his office." I stood up, and a coworker patted me sympathetically. "Think you messed up that project last time?" I scratched my head and gave a silly smile before heading to the CEO's office to find out. The moment I opened the door, I saw Peter setting up breakfast on the table. "Come over and eat." The aroma was making my stomach rumble. I felt a bit awkward. "How did you know I didn't eat?" Peter's expression remained calm, but there was a hint of a smile in his eyes. "I know you well enough." We sat strangely and harmoniously eating breakfast on the top floor of the CBD. After eating, Peter lazily squinted with a smile on his lips. "Didn't forget about yesterday, did you?" My hand instinctively covered my lips, my heart racing. Peter's light-colored lips curled into a smile, and he leaned in, his eyes burning. His handsome face near mine, I hardly dared to breathe as his nose touched my forehead, hot breath on my skin. "Aren't you going to give me a title?" My face turned a bit pink, looking at his eyes. I nodded directly, "Yeah." Just then, my phone rang, so I paused. Peter gave me a quick glance and answered his phone. It seemed like a work call. He said a few words, then put his phone away. "I have something to take care of, wait for me for dinner tonight." With that, he suddenly leaned in, pecking my lips and walked away with a mischievous smile. Watching his back, I thought, oh, I'm done for. This version of Peter, I like even more now. It's just, now Peter acts so naturally as if we've never been apart. It makes me inexplicably worried. After dinner, we sat on a bench in the square to rest. A quiet place with only the two of us, perfect for a conversation. I took a breath, looked at him. Don't you have anything to say to me? About the way I left without a word? Or my sudden return? He seemed to accept my return naturally, never asking about those years. No. Peter's answer was straightforward. I didn't believe him. Really nothing? Peter got my point and sighed, putting his hand on my shoulder, firmly promising, I have no right to blame you for leaving without a word. But I clearly know that I want to be part of your present and future. With you, I'm racing against time. This weekend, Peter plans to take me to see Grandma. Once I got in the car, Peter handed me a card. I looked it over and asked, what's this supposed to mean? Peter's long fingers turned the steering wheel. It's to pay back the medical bills I owed you. Oh, I remembered. Peter used to juggle part-time work and freelance software jobs back in school, all for his grandma. When she fell ill, it was me who covered the medical expenses. I told him back then he didn't have to pay it back. Even though it's a hefty amount for me now. Peter pushed up his glasses, hinting, it's also my salary account. I paused, blinking wide-eyed, and quietly tucked it away. If someone doesn't want money, it's because they haven't seen enough of it. Only a fool would refuse it. I eagerly went to link this card to my account. You know, you actually met Grandma a long time ago. Wasn't it last time in the hospital? I'm counting the zeros on my bank card while replying to Peter. Peter's lost in thought, and actually, I met you way back too. Does Grandma look familiar to you? Riverbank, a small stall. With Peter dropping hints, I finally remember. I was in high school, hanging out with friends, when I saw an elderly lady selling flowers. It was pretty late at night. We made eye contact, and she asked, young lady, wanna buy some flowers? I can never say no to people. Especially a kind-looking grandma. I bought all her remaining flowers and handed her 1,000 yuan in cash. The grandma quickly shook her head, trying to give me change back. I waved it off, no need, Grandma, head home early. Turning away with my friend, who teased, are you like, some kind of wealth fairy? I squint and grin, just doing a good deed. But I didn't see you at the time. I ask Peter. Peter playfully tugs my ear, I got there just after you left. What she didn't know is that this money helped him through a tough spot. Tuition was due, but he couldn't reach his parents. He knew they were using it as leverage. He didn't want to beg them, so he worked part-time every day, and Grandma sold flowers. But they were just a bit short. That day Grandma received a generous payment. Grandma was delighted to see me. She held my hand and secretly asked if Peter had done something to upset me and if I was breaking up with him. I awkwardly laughed and rubbed my nose. If Peter bullies you, just tell Grandma, she'll straighten him out. I nodded vigorously, definitely. While Grandma cooked, Peter and I strolled nearby. Peter's hometown is a beautiful coastal city. We walked hand in hand by the sea. The gentle sea breeze lifted my hair, and suddenly I felt so happy. Two people close at heart didn't drift apart. As night fell, we took a shortcut back home. The town roads twisted and turned. Peter? A voice called from ahead. A guy about our age quickly walked over, spotting Peter, licking his lips, it really is you. Peter immediately took a step back. Instinctively, I gripped his hand tighter. I assessed the person in front of us. Wearing shabby clothes, dark-skinned, his eyes lacked friendliness, the way of the street about him. Seeing Peter ignoring him, he raised his voice, waving a hand in Peter's face. Hey, it's me, John, old classmate. Don't recognize me? Then he glanced at me, up and down. Wow, is this your girlfriend? Not bad, heard you became a big city boss, and landed such a pretty girlfriend too. I couldn't yet tell if he was friendly or hostile until his next line. You haven't been back in a while, Miss Tangjie? He's bringing John right over. Bro's a bit short on cash lately, be wise and cough some up. I froze, instantly realizing. They used to be like that, extorting protection money from Peter. Even though Peter's all grown up, in their eyes, he's still that kid they pushed around. Dog barks and footsteps echoed faintly from the alley. Getting closer and closer until another person with a dog appeared. He saw Peter, first surprised, then laughing and sizing him up. I worriedly looked at Peter, who shook his head at me. I'm not afraid anymore. They dismissively eyed Peter. Oh, dressed up like a big shot now, big boss, still scared of us, huh? You shut up. I couldn't stand others mocking him. I rushed forward to confront them. But they weren't scared, just letting the dog loose. The dog's barking was frequent and loud, intimidating. In John's vision, Peter should already be curled up on the ground. But it didn't go as he thought. Peter just glanced at the dog, then focused on him. Peter looked at me first, and with my nod, he punched John without hesitation. That punch shattered the timid, cowardly youth image of Peter. I cheered and encouraged Peter from the side. You're awesome, Peter. Everyone has weaknesses, and my Peter faced his bravely. I was genuinely happy for him. Hearing my voice, Peter suddenly felt touched. At 18, he was weary of life. Amy shone into his world like the sun. After she left, he survived on memories. Until she came back to him. Having her with him was wonderful. Been with Peter for so long now. Peter's becoming more and more attached to me. Sometimes he can't even stop himself at work, often using his position to come see me. At work, we're just boss and staff, formal as ever. Once home, Peter turns clingy. Leaning on the bed, thinking of when he first saw me, I couldn't resist asking, weren't you afraid I'd not like you anymore once I came back? After all, you kissed me without asking. Peter calmly flipped a page, a small curve forming at his pale lips. I knew you still cared about me. I paused, cheeks warming. So full of himself. Peter set the book down, gently pinching my cheek, looking at me tenderly. Your eyes can't lie. The night was pulling, lights dim. Don't know whose kiss landed first, but soft kisses deepened. As emotions intensified, Peter held me close, fingers tracing my neck, whispering near my ear, don't leave me again. I couldn't speak, responding instead with action. Peter might not be the flashiest guy in school. But he's my main character. Youthful chapters will end, but the boy from my memories is right here with me.